All right, hey everyone, this is Mason with HerbRally. We're going to do our second episode ever of the Herbalist Hour. And today on the podcast, we have Sonya Yamaguchi. Thanks for joining us today, Sonya.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about plants and to meet you and to share like that love with the global community. It's really exciting.
Amen. And where are you?
I am in Kaua'i, Hawaii. So I live on an island. It's called the Garden Island. And it's very true to its name. Yeah, there's plants and flowers everywhere. And yeah, that's where I am now. It's actually pouring rain. We're under a flood watch and it's just soaking in the earth. I can just feel it like filling up all the water tables and everything. So that's really nice.
I'm here in Eugene, Oregon, and it's actually been raining all day here as well, which is no surprise. We're kind of known for that. I wanted to do this interview somewhere at some park, but it did not work out that way because it's been raining all day. Yeah, you said you're in Hawaii. I know you just wrote this book, and we'll probably chat a little bit about that. But before we get into the new book, I kind of just want to get some background on you, like who were your first herbal mentors? Well, how did you get into herbalism, and just kind of tell us about that journey.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a common beginning, my story that most herbalists have, like just falling in love with the plants at a young age as a child. I grew up along a river, and to get to my house, you had to drive down a dirt road, and I had to walk that road as a young child. And so I inevitably started talking to the flowers and the trees and had a special like secret shortcut. And so that kind of like instilled, started that love of plants in me. And going through a rough patch when my parents split up, the trees were always my most loyal companion. I could climb them and just like feel so supported by the trees, when I was a young girl. And that's pretty much where it started. And then as a teenager, I started to think about what type of education I wanted. And so I was like, man, I really want to study herbalism. But at that time, there was no teachers in Hawaii and there wasn't any online courses. So I kind of put that on the back burner and went to massage school, practiced massage for many years. And then I had 2 children. And with the birth of my daughter, my second child, I started to be like, like they get coughs and colds and scrapes and bumps and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I wish I could just go outside to my garden and know what I could use to help treat my family on a day-to-day, basis. And so I started to look into it again, looking for teachers. And I found Rosemary Gladstar's course online, The Science and Art of Herbalism. And I was like, if I'm going to learn herbalism, I might as well learn from the grandmother herself. And so I enrolled in that course. And then right around the same time, a Hawaiian La'au Lapa'au teacher showed up. And so La'au Lapa'au in Hawaiian means, herbal plant medicine. And so I started taking in-person classes as well. We met once a week. And I studied with my kumu, my teacher, for 3 years in a group. And at the same time doing Rosemary Gladstar's online course. So that took me about 5 years to finish because I was a mom and I was doing this other course as well. So yeah, that's kind of my background in it so far.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like a lot of people's stories, somewhere along the line, Rosemary Gladstar is involved in there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I just related so much to like her, her bubbly, bright spirit when it came to plants. And I just connected with her and like her folk medicine style, and you could just see that sparkle in her eye when she talked about plants, and it just ignited that in me as well. So
She still has it too. And I've actually taken 2 apprenticeships myself, both here in Oregon, but it's been a few years since I've taken an apprenticeship, and Amanda and I think together are going to be doing the science and art of herbalism here. So I'm super stoked to get in on that.
Yeah. It's great. There's a lot of, I like it because I could do an online and in person, like not in person, but at home, like with the books. Yeah. And then it was all like, projects. So I got to like make a ton of medicine and submit, homework. And it's actually a funny story. Like the end of my course with her, at the very end, you have to submit like a materia medica, right, for all the plants you learn. And honestly, I kind of failed because I was like learning about these herbs, you know, on the mainland, in the States, but we can grow some of them here, but not all of them. So I started to create my own materia medica with local medicinal plants. And then that's kind of how Super Noni, my book, was born. Because I honestly, materia medica too, like, it's kind of boring for me personally. It doesn't really like speak to my heart or stimulate, something fun in my brain. So I thought, how fun would it be to write stories about plants from the perspective of them as a person? So Super Noni was born from that, like, oh, I got to submit something for my final homework. Hey, Rosemary, I wrote these stories about native Hawaiian plants. Can I submit that? And she was like, sure.
That's cool. That's a nice segue, actually. I did notice that Rosemary actually gave you the foreword in your book, which is super epic.
That was like, that was like a green big stamp of approval on my book for sure. I was so delighted. I was like, my hero like read my book and wrote me a foreword. It was just like such a gift and such a blessing. Yeah, I'm so grateful.
That's super cool. Did you want to read one of the stories from your book?
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, this is kind of like the funnest part because I wrote this book for children because I feel like whenever I work with herbs and work with plants, my inner child really like just lights up. And so at one point when I did a lot of like inner child healing, she, little Sonya, as I like to call her, was like, you got to take me with you, like whenever you work with plants. So I try to do that. And I started teaching children about herbalism and Lao Lapa'au. And so the stories are a big part of it. And so reading the stories and acting them out is like one of my favorite things. So for sure, I'd be happy to read a story.
Very cool. Is this going to be participatory? Do I have to say anything?
No, you don't.
I'll just go along for the ride. All right, here we go.
All right. I'll read just the Super Noni story.
Cool.
Yeah, the little superhero.
All right.
All right. Super Noni. Hi, my name is Noni, and I'm a little bit shy. Some people say mean things about me, and it really makes me cry. They say I stink, say I'm gross, and it's really kind of sad. If they'd only give me a chance, I'd be the best friend they ever had. I grow into a small bush, but can also be a tree. I arrived in a canoe long ago and found home here in Hawaii. You'll see me growing all along the beautiful island coasts. Tutu Kane plants me in his garden. Of my medicine he boasts. He picks my ripe fruit and puts them in a jar, then leaves it out in the sun. It's really kind of bizarre. Pretty soon my fruit begins to get soft and break down. This juice is the best tonic you'll find anywhere around. It fights worms, germs, pain, and sorrow. It will give you strength and endurance to live a better tomorrow. The benefits of this juice are too many to say. Just get past the smell of it and drink it while you pray. There's one more thing I want to say to you before you off and go. The little eyes on my fruit are rather special. Did you know? Each eye is formed from a single flower, and my one fruit is many fruits. This gives me so much power. All my eyes come together to make up one big fruit. So when I go inside your body, I can see what gets the boot. You see, when we come together in unity for a greater cause, the medicine is so much stronger. This is one of nature's laws. So the lesson here is not to judge a fruit by its stinky cover. My name is Noni, and I'll care for you, a plant friend like no other. There he is, Super Noni. He's a superhero. He's holding his little flower, and he's so cute.
Very cute. And do you want to tell us about the illustrator?
Yeah, so Paige is amazing. She works here in Honolulu. She's actually, yeah, Paige Guglielmana. She's a coordinator for a children's after school educational program with like Hawaiian cultural activities, and she's a botanical artist. She also does she's got a fish series that she's working on now as well, like local fish. And she's just, yeah, she's a treasure. She brought these characters to life. You know, I wrote the stories and had a vision in mind of these characters, right? And she just brought them to life. You know, there's Super Noni, there's Mama Mamaki, there's King Kukui, you know, he's the king of the trees. There's Tender Eva Eva, which is the maidenhair fern. And she's very like tender and soft and hides away. So I wrote the stories about these plants so that they would really, their characters, their personalities would come out. Because I felt like, you know, our brains interpret stories differently when we hear stories. And that's been the teaching method for, you know, centuries, right? Storytelling. And so it ignites something different in our mind. We start to see the character, we can see them come to life, and then we can connect with that character as well. And then, wow, you know, that plant is just like me, like, you know. And so I felt like with the children especially, and even like our inner child, like it brings the plants to life, and then we can develop, you know, a more intimate relationship with them, and we see how similar we are. Or yeah, so that's kind of, it's been really fun. And like the kids come up to me now, Auntie Sonya, you know, like here's Mama Mamaki, I found some, I'm growing it now, you know. They get all excited. And I feel like, especially the children, when they start to develop a relationship with the plants that are growing around them, and they start to see, like, not only are they beneficial for medicine, but they're friends, that they'll care for them and care for the environment that they grow in, you know, because you would never go outside and destroy your friend's house if you love them. And, you know, so you know, long-term vision is like, it'll instill in the children a love for the earth and for the plants that grow. Yeah.
I love that. I could tell that you really aren't a fan of the materia medica. You love getting out there and actually hanging out with the plants. And I had the same experience in my early herbal journey. You know, I was reading books and hanging out with a lot of cut and sifted dried herbs and jars and stuff. It wasn't really until I went out into like the old growth forest of Oregon that I started having relationships with these plants. And we went out on a hike just 3 days ago, and it was so nice to get back out there. You see little signs of spring, but I'm just so looking forward to the plants popping out and getting to hang out with them again, you know.
Yeah, and that was something Rosemary talks about a lot too, which I love. And that's how I wrote the stories. I would go to where they were growing the plants and sit with them and just kind of, you know, ask like, okay, like I'm here, like what do you want to say, you know? So, and then I would write, especially King Kukui. There's a, you know, a native tree, the candle nut tree, kukui nut here. And I was like, I wrote the story, and then I actually read it out loud, and I got like a big no. And I was like, okay. So I started over and then read it out loud again, and then it was like a yes. So it was like really fun to get to know the plants in that way, just on a more like emotional level. Yeah,
Totally.
instead of just like, yeah, more like, you know, what's that called? Like in the kitchen, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I did want to ask, is noni a fruit that I would know? Is that like a superfood? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's a superfood, which is kind of why, you know, it's Super Noni, because he's a superhero,
Oh,
like a
sure.
super fruit. It
Yeah.
does grow all over. It's from Asia. It does grow all over Asia, and in the Pacific Ocean. Like when I went to Tahiti when I was a young, you know, teenager and traveled through French Polynesia, they had noni everywhere,
Okay.
and it's super stinky. If you aren't familiar with noni, it's like people are like, it's horrifying. Like it's like rotten blue cheese vinegar stinky sock. Like
I gotta try this stuff.
I'll have to send you some. I actually love it because I'm,
Yeah,
you know, used to it and I love it.
sure.
But there's a recipe, so I added recipes in the book as well. So there's you drink it, you ferment it in the jar, and
Okay.
then you drink shots of it, like it's like a probiotic in a,
Sure.
yeah. And to get the kids to drink it was a real chore. So I wrote a recipe called Super Noni and the secret sauce. So there's
Okay.
a secret sauce in there that you can make. Grapefruit juice helps to kind of neutralize the
Mm.
smell and the flavor a little bit. And then, you know, you add like orange or tangerine juice for sweetness. And the kids would throw it back, you know, or some of them would be like, oh my gosh, what is this? And it was just so fun to like introduce it to the kids too, you know, and to see their reaction. Yeah.
So
But
it's already stinky, and then you ferment it, and then I can only imagine that it builds on its smell right there.
yeah, there's a lot of, you know, in the islands, there's a lot of businesses that make like noni leather, or you can use it for bandages as well. Like the leaves make a wonderful tea, like a tonic as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's an all around, like everyone's got to have it in their yard kind of a tree.
Yeah, I'm stoked to give it a try. We were going to ask you some of these Ask an Herbalist questions, but I also wanted to know if you could speak a little bit about blue vervain. Are you able to speak on that a little bit? Maybe how it's used in Hawaiian medicine, or?
Yeah, so in Hawaii and La'alapa'au, they call it Hau'i. And what we have here, we do have a native one that like the leaves are just really, really small, and the
Mhm.
flowers are really, really small and like a light lavender. And it's a little bit harder to find, but we do have like the Jamaican blue vervain variety that just grows rampant and wild like a weed here. That one's got like a really dark purple flower and it's bigger. In some places on the islands on different trails, there's even one with a pink flower.
Mhm.
And what I learned about Hau'i or blue vervain is that it's it's a nerve herb, but there's like nervines that help to like immediately calm the nervous system, right? You know, you have lemon balm or lavender, tulsi, those ones kind of like balance out the nervous system. Like even in the moment you can feel it, right? So what I've learned about blue vervain is that it feeds the nervous system, like it helps to replenish it so that your nervous system can draw from it. You know, it's like a place to build up your reserves. Like it feeds the nervous system, it heals it on a deeper level. And so I look at it as like nerve food, you know.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then locally it's used for like I use it a lot for colds and flus as well. Like I will add it to a blend. There was a old tutu auntie, like in Tahiti, they use it to cure dengue fever.
Hmm.
So it's one of those plants that has such a broad, you know, like application to it. But yeah, it's definitely a top favorite of mine, and it grows right outside, like in the yard, like wild.
I love that. I was growing it a little bit in my home in Oregon when we lived out here. It's definitely an ally of mine. I take it tonically every day. So yeah, it just caught my eye that you included that in the book. I thought that was super cool and
Yeah, so
unexpected.
there's a lot of like, you know, herbs that grow in the States that grow here as weeds or wild, and we've adopted like Hawaiian names for them. So like one of the stories in my book is the Weed Warriors, and
Mhm.
Blue Vervain Hau'i is one of them. And the other two is Gotu Kola, or
Mhm.
Pohe Kula, as we call it in Hawaii. And then there's also Plantago, like Laukahi. And we call that Laukahi or plantain. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we have
uh,
Hawaiian names for a lot of the familiar herbs. Mhm.
I know you're familiar with David Bruce Leonard. He actually wrote a monograph on Gotu Kola because it's one of the herbs I'm pretty sure he uses quite a bit in Hawaii. So
Mhm.
yeah. Um, Sweet. Well, thanks for reading from the story and telling us about Super Noni and Blue Vervain. Shall we get into some of these Ask an Herbalist questions?
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Cool. I'll just kind of start from the top. I love this one, and everyone kind of has a different answer, so I'll be curious to hear what you have to say. How long did you study plant medicine before feeling qualified to call yourself an herbalist?
That is a good one. And that's something that like I grappled with, you know. So I eventually, you know, before I felt like that confirmation that I could call myself an herbalist, I would just call myself an herbal enthusiast. And I sat with that for a long time. And then I felt like once I received, you know, my certificate from Rosemary Gladstar's course, that I could call myself an herbalist. And then also having the blessing from my Hawaiian kumu teacher. When I wrote my book, you know, I asked for, you know, his blessing on it and permission as well. And so when he gave me that like go ahead as well, I felt like, okay, I can call myself an herbalist. But that was like, you know, at least 5 years in the making for sure, before I felt comfortable calling myself an herbalist.
I love it.
Yeah. And I know like a lot of people will kind of adopt that term like, oh, healer as well. Like you hear that, it's kind of a buzzword now. And honestly, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, because I always feel like people like, oh, you're a healer. I'm like, no. The plants are the healers, right? Like
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
the plants are the real herbalists, and
Yeah.
I'm just like the middleman, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like I like calling myself a herbalist. I feel like it's just a representation that I'm a good listener. You know,
Yeah.
I know how to listen to the plants, and I know how to listen to people. And so if I know how to listen to the plants and the people, then I can hear what both of them are saying. Sometimes even behind the words, and then plants don't use words. So you have to listen in a different way, right? And then I'm just the matchmaker. Yeah.
Do you have a clinical practice, or is that kind of not your realm?
I don't have a clinical practice, but I do dream of having one day, and that's kind of like in
Sure.
my future goals. Yeah. I do have another book in mind that I wanted to put out before I, you know, start down the road of going to clinical herbalism school. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, they're all just different levels, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't, my brother calls me an herbalist. I like herbal enthusiast, but I totally feel you. Yeah. As long as we just operate within the scope of our knowledge, you know.
Right.
That's
Yeah, I'm kind
that's
of,
the
sometimes
thing.
I feel like I'm already kind of practicing in a way, but not officially, you know,
Yeah.
because people will come to me and ask, what can I use for this or that? Or can you make me something? And
Sure.
yeah. So then I do like, you know, make remedies for my community and stuff too. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
like starting down that road, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. What is the most versatile herb that you use and would recommend due to its versatility?
Right. So there's a couple there. That was a kind of a hard one to think about because there's just so many, right? But we do have a really interesting herb that I wanted to talk about that grows native here in Hawaii. It's mamaki, and it's actually a cousin to nettles. It's in the nettle family, and so I feel like with nettles, and then once I learned about mamaki, that is just the most versatile herb ever. I mean, you could literally put it into every remedy, and I feel like it would be beneficial. And mamaki is a lot of the same way as well, because it like builds and cleans the blood. And
Mm.
that's just pretty much like, you know, the life force is in our blood. It's like once if your blood is taken care of, it feels like everything else is just has that positive domino effect. Um, and then also the other herb I use a lot that I'm learning more about the versatility of it is Tulsi. You know,
Mm.
initially I used it as an adaptogen, and but then come to find, you know, I started adding it in a lot of my children's remedies as well for colds and flu. And then when I had COVID, I felt like Tulsi was the one herb that turned my brain back on.
Mm. Yeah.
After having COVID and the brain fog and all of that. Um, so I feel like Tulsi is another one of those herbs that just has such a wide appeal that you could literally put into every remedy, and it would be, yeah, beneficial.
So you said the nettle one, is that called mamaki?
Mamaki,
Is
yeah.
that so is it like nutritive? Do people eat it like a food?
Mhm. You know, I add it into soups. I do, because it has a slippery element as well when you like
Mm.
eat it in a soup, like in a food, so it can kind of like clean out the digestive system, but it's mainly used as a tea.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does it have the stinging hairs?
No.
Oh, okay. Did you include that in your book, the
I
mamaki?
did, yeah. So
Okay,
there's Mama Mamaki.
that's right.
Hmm.
I did read a bunch of your book actually, so it sounded familiar to me. So
Yeah.
very cool. Oh, this is a juicy one. What does the herbalism industry need most right now to evolve positively, besides more herbalists?
I love that one. That's such a good one. Because I feel like it's becoming so popular and it's just like taking off, right? And when things start to like take off, you know, sometimes things can sprout up where it's questionable. You're like, is that, like in Hawaii, we were raised around the culture that you do everything pono. So you do everything like out of respect for the land, out of respect for your elders, out of respect for how it's going to affect future generations. And so, that's why I always ask for permission before I harvest herbs or give thanks and teach the kids that type of respect. And so I feel like that's really important to think about as well, like moving forward as herbalists, or people that are plant enthusiasts. Another thing I would love to see and that I'm working with other women in my community is to develop like community pharmacies. So like community gardens. There's a wonderful herbalist here that I went to school with, La'au school, and she's like planted this beautiful herb farm, and it's her vision to like be able to get it out to the people, like local people, so people know like they can come to her garden and pick what they might need for their family. And so I
Mm,
feel like having an herbalist maybe in every home or in every neighborhood is what I would love to see moving forward, like bringing it back to like just a common thing that we all practice, like as part of our lives. Like, um, we can, especially in today's modern world, we can put a lot of like shininess on it, like, oh, I'm an herbalist, but I feel like bringing it back down to like, into every home or like every neighborhood has a herbalist and they have a big garden and they share their garden with the people in their community whenever they need to come and pick herbs is what I personally would love to see. And
amazing. I love that vision. Is there any way we could plug that person, where we could find out more about her project or?
Yeah, her name is Madeline. She's on Instagram right now. I'll send you the information so
Sure.
we can link it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's really doing something special for sure.
Yeah, I know an herbalist in Charlotte named Brandon Ruiz, and he was running something for a while called the Charlotte Herbal Accessibility Project, something like that. And it was a very similar mission, it sounds like. And yeah, I just love that idea so much.
Yeah, I think her handle on Instagram is Wild Ways Collective.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, an herbalist on every corner. That
Yep.
could-
For sure. Yeah. In every home.
Yep. So here's kind of a vague question. What herb surprised you?
Yeah. I think plantain surprised me the most. We call it laukahi here, and I feel like I was so surprised by it because it literally grows like right outside. Like it's just a weed, right? It grows everywhere. And when I started to learn about it, using it as a poultice
Mm,
for infections or for mosquito bites or anything like that, it just surprised me so much how effective it was. I used it with my daughter when she got stung by a bee. She's like, ow, 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 like screaming out of pain. And I ran out of the ocean. I'd noticed I'd seen laukahi on our way down, right? I'm always like looking for it now to make sure I know, like in an emergency, like out and about, I can run back and grab it, right? So I ran out, remembered where the patch was, rinsed it off, chewed it up. So we make a spit poultice. You just chew it up in your mouth and you just stick it on.
yep.
And so, yeah, I teach that to the kids too. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, just chew it up and stick it on. And they're like, okay. for bee stings, and it takes the pain and swelling away within minutes. Or, mosquito bites. We have tons of mosquitoes here. It works so great for that as well. And then also I have a lot of gardener friends, and one friend got a dragon fruit, like cactus needle, like stuck in his knuckle.
Oh my
He's like,
gosh.
can you make me something, please? And I said, sure. So I made him a laukahi poultice, plantain poultice. And within days, it brought it to the surface and we could pull it out.
Wow.
We do have a lot of like staph here as well, or like weird boils sometimes will come out on the skin. And my son had a really big one right here on his arm. And I just laukahi poultice for a couple days. And then finally it brought everything to a head. And that sucker drained like I've never seen. And then I also added a little golden seal to it, for bacteria or whatever. But yeah, it's just the pulling abilities to pull toxins out of the body and even like foreign objects is amazing. I'm like, I bow down to that humble weed, just like, are you crazy? And then, sometimes I throw it in green drinks as well. My Hawaiian kumu teacher, he was really into green drinks. So, because he says you get the blood, you get the cocoa of the plant. So I make a weed juice is a recipe in my book. So we put in the plantain, gotu kola, blue vervain. I add a little mint for flavor, and we just blend it and strain it and drink it.
It's also very versatile, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like plantain is like your favorite herbalist's favorite herb. So good answer. Do you throw dandelion in the green juice ever?
I don't. We don't really have dandelion wild
really?
here. Only up in the mountains have I seen it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
where it gets a little colder. Yeah.
Sure.
We have a weird like relative of it, but it doesn't feel the same. We do have a lot of Biden's Pelosa.
Okay, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, we call it kanehi. So I throw that in as well because it's such a great herb. Yeah.
Biden's grows all over, I want to say the South, like Florida and
Mhm.
places like that.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like this one a lot. What do you do when you see someone you don't know well is dealing with an issue that you're pretty sure you could help with, but they haven't asked for help?
Oh, that's such a good one. It's so hard, right? Because you're like, I know I could, the plants are like, actually what it is I hear the plants behind me going, send me out. And so what I usually do is I just offer. Because in the past I have made remedies and sold remedies, like herbal syrups and teas and tinctures and stuff. I had a little like business for a while where I was making products and selling them. So what I ended up doing then, and also now what I do as well, is I just offer. I say, hey, I have a little herbal apothecary at home. I could make some tea for you, or I could even make a soup. I can add herbs to soup, or I have, some extra salve I'd be happy to give you. And so I usually just offer it. And then they're like, oh, let me pay you. How much is it? And I'm like, no, it's a gift. Right. Because then I feel like if they don't like it, or if
Right.
if it doesn't work for some reason, or whatever, then it's not like they paid for it and they're like, oh yeah, she pushed me on this, this product or this remedy, and then she charged me for it, so I always offer it as a gift.
Turning it into like a monetary transaction could probably ruin like the spirit of the whole thing. And I get the feeling with your demeanor walking up to people there, you're probably just so delightful. I'm sure that they don't feel like they're being judged or, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sure you just come out there with trying to help them with the plants and, have you had experiences where people were put off by it or?
Well, yeah, actually one time I have a really good friend. She's got two young ones who just kind of were getting sick kind of a lot, and she also had a cold, and it was like really hard for her to like keep up. So I offered to make her some tea, and I added some peppermint to it, which I probably shouldn't have because she was breastfeeding, and then her milk kind of started to dry up a little bit, and I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry, like just stop drinking the tea, and so she stopped and it was fine and her milk recovered. But Yeah, that was like the one thing she was a little bit put off, but not long term. I ended up making more tea for her after that.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And then sometimes, yeah, I'll be like, because my palate is so like just attuned to like the bitter, the noni, like all the
Yeah.
different wild like herbal flavors that it doesn't really bother me, but like somebody else like angiographis or something like that, it's just like a no, you know. Whereas, yeah, especially noni, people get turned off. But I'm like, if only you knew how much it could help, you know. But yeah,
Totally. Good answer.
just let it go, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, what is the first plant you remember having a relationship with as a kid?
That's a really good one because, like, yeah, like my story, you know, I'd walk down my dirt road and talk to all the flowers and trees and stuff. And it's funny because this isn't even like a real herb, but I know that you can eat the flowers of like this orange lily. It grows wild here, and still like it pops up in different places, and it just I know there's like the daylilies where you can eat the petals, and those are really fun to like, you know, add in. So I feel like herbalism or like our relationship with plants doesn't always have to be like, oh, I take this herb and then it helps me this way physically. I feel
Totally.
like with plants and especially flowers, like now like the image of a lily has like helped me so much in all of my like challenging aspects of life. Like when I was giving birth, I just envisioned like the petals of a lily, or like even now, like going through like challenging times, and sometimes I can feel my heart kind of start to constrict. I'll just lay down and do some deep breathing, and I can see like the petals of the lily of like my heart just slowly start to open up again. So it brings me back to that like childhood experience of just seeing this beautiful flower blooming out from, you know, all this green and whatever, and just connecting with it and being like, oh, I see you, you know.
Would you say that that lily was like a decorative or an ornamental, or is it just kind of growing wild out
It
there?
just grows wild out here. I don't even know its official name because I just named it as a kid, and it's just
Yeah.
that's been its name. Like a jungle lily is what I call it.
Yeah. I kind of relate. I really like the daffodil, which is definitely like a ornamental out here in Oregon. Definitely, as far as I know, no herbal uses for it, but it pops up actually probably around this time. I haven't seen any yet, but to me, it's just kind of like the harbinger of spring. It's always like one of the first blooms that I see, so it definitely just kind of gets me in the spirit of spring is coming and that kind of thing. And that just always makes me super happy to see this. Yellow's like my favorite color too, so yeah, I really dig it. And again, yeah, it's not really an herbalism, but yeah, I totally feel you on that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. Flowers are super special, and yeah, you know, the flower essences and stuff.
Mm,
I
yeah.
definitely feel like, yeah, it's important to remember um, that type of medicine as well.
Is there any sort of flower essence practice in Hawaiian medicine, or are you just kind of merging that with what you know?
Yeah, just kind of merging that with what I know. I've played around with it a little bit. Like I don't feel qualified enough to speak on it, but I've
Sure.
played with like mimosa
Mm.
flowers, and just, you know, there's a friend of mine who lives down the road who's playing with like orchids and flower essences. And then there's also a guy, I think he's on Maui, who does a lot of like fern essences as well,
Oh,
like with the native ferns that grow here, which is
cool.
really special. Yeah. hmm
I love mimosa too. Do those grow in Hawaii?
They do, yeah. So you can imagine my delight when I, you know, was studying herbalism with Rosemary's course, and then learning about the plants, and then they grow here, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I didn't realize elder could grow here, and then I went up to the mountains and there it is wild, and I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, honey, pull over, you know, like stop the car.
You're a
I was so
true
excited.
herbalist.
It doesn't ever go to fruit though, because it doesn't get cold enough. So we do
Oh
have
wow.
elder. Yeah, we do have flower. And I actually moved some down here to lower elevation, and it's growing pretty well. It will flower, but it won't ever go to fruit.
Do you ever make medicine with the flowers?
I do. Yeah, it's another one of my favorites.
What's that fizzy drink made out of it? I can't remember. There's like a traditional I want to
Like
say it's fermented,
champagne.
but Yeah, maybe it's something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, can't think of it right now, but
Saint Germain. That's the
yeah,
alcohol.
yeah. What is one of the funniest or most memorable experiences you had with a plant or teaching herbalism?
Yeah, so definitely teaching the children is just, it's so
Right,
much fun.
right.
Um, I guess some of my favorite moments have been like we make a salve out of a native plant here called Pohinahina, and it grows on the beaches, and it's really great for like sunburns or rashes, like dry, itchy, that kind of stuff. And so we make a salve with it. And I had one of the children come back to me, weeks later after we made it and said, Auntie, my cousin, had a rash, and so I put the Pohinahina, I put the salve on, and I did like you said, to put your hands on and pray and like, put good love into it, because that's another thing I teach that I feel like is really important. Our hands are an extension of our heart, so when we're
Mm.
making our medicine or even putting medicine on somebody, we always want to fill it with love and good thoughts. And she's like, I put my love on it and then it got better, it healed. I was like, yay. She's like, yeah. So like seeing the kids, like, then hearing from their parents, oh, they have their own little like medicine shelf, where they keep their tea and the tincture and the salve you made. Just, I'm like, yes, it's, that's it. And then another one that was really funny is they were like preschoolers, and I was reading the stories. So I developed like the stories about the plants, but then I was like, it would be fun to talk about stories about, just symptoms, like colds or flus or fevers. So I wrote a story about fevers, like a little poem. And, at one point I had mentioned in the story that you can get a fever sometimes if you have parasites or worms, and this little, 4-year-old interrupted me. He's like, my friend my friend had a fever and worms, and the fever went away, but the worms didn't. I was like, oh no. They'll just like interrupt you mid, whatever you're doing, and just like relate their stories to you. It's just, I love that.
Yeah, with kids, the humor is never ending. So yeah, I should have known you would have a good answer for that one.
Oh yeah, there's the worm story, there's poop stories, because
Oh yeah.
our kukui nut tree, the candle nut tree, has a nut that is really tasty raw. It almost tastes like, like almonds,
Hmm.
but it's a laxative. So it's like I
Okay.
include that in my story, like it'll actually make you run to the bathroom. And so the kids love to joke, oh, you're going to camp out in the bathroom, or how many nuts did you eat? And
Is that the same one? When I used to work at Mountain Rose Herbs, and we sold, I want to say, kukui nut oil. Is that the same tree?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
Did not know it was an edible food.
Yeah, so when eaten raw, it's produces like a, laxative effect, but you can cook it. Like, so in Hawaii, we cook it on the pan, fry it up and brown it and put it on poke, like fresh fish, and it doesn't have the
Oh.
same effect.
What is one thing you do daily to practice your craft?
Oh, that's such a good one too, right? Because it's like we're always building relationships with these plants, and the relationships evolve, and there's different circumstances and situations where you relate to the plant in a different way, or maybe you like trial and error. Like, so I make tea every day as part of that practice, just to keep learning about the plants and keep like logging, experiences that I have with the plants to add to my knowledge base. Um, because I feel like the plants, especially, and depending on who you blend them with, have a different application in the body. So still playing, I feel like, is really important to continue that playful like interaction with plants. So I'll go out to my garden and check on my plants and talk to them and try to make notice of what's happening, and try to look for ways that maybe I can like help their growth, or ways they might be struggling and need attention, or just be like, wow, you're looking beautiful today, look at you go. So just keeping that relationship going through interacting hands-on with the live plants, and also making tea and playing with different like possibilities of teas and blends and stuff like that. And just always learning, right? That's one thing I love about plants is it's never ending. The
Never be
learning,
bored. Yeah. So it
right?
sounds like you do single herbs, but then you also work with different blends when you're making the teas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Go
One of
ahead.
my oh yeah, one of my favorite things to do. So lately, I have a lot of like uh connections to California as well, because I was born in California, but I grew up in Hawaii. My family moved here when I was like 2.
Hmm.
But I love California, and I love the herbs of California, especially all the sages and the white sage. And I got my mom to plant a bunch of like native sages in her yard, and she had this beautiful white sage. And so we harvested some, and I have a little like stash here. And I've always known white sage to be like, you burn it, right? But
Yeah.
I've been adding it into my teas, and
Hmm.
I've been drinking it, and the like bringing it into like my body has just been a totally different experience that I'm just really loving. You know, the native like shumash way they used it was they would just pour a bowl, you put it in a bowl, one leaf in a bowl of hot water every night, and drink it every night if you're going through like a period of grief or anxiety, and you would only do that for a few nights. So I've been doing that, and it's, you can just like feel it calming your spirit. I've been adding it to blends too, to kind of like enhance the blend in a spiritual way. Like I feel like it harmonizes all the herbs, and like when you drink it with all the other herbs, it just kind of like uplifts it all and moves it throughout the body really efficiently. Um, so yeah, continuing to learn as well and play has been really beneficial.
I love that. Yeah, I can't say I've ever consumed white sage before, so
Yeah, try
yeah, I'll give it a shot.
it.
I also like that you brought up going in the garden as well. We asked my friend Tree the same question, and her answer was literally like 2 seconds long. She's like, "I go in the garden," and I was like, "Yeah, that's a good answer."
Enough said.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful.
Mhm.
I'm sure you have quite the answer for this. What's your favorite way to introduce children to herbalism?
Right. So yeah, I talked about it a little bit, but just the stories,
Yeah,
like making it fun.
yeah.
Um, the stories are really fun. Kids just connect to stories so much better than like just information on a sheet. And so with my book as well, I have a link where you can download coloring sheets as well. So that was one aspect I wanted to include, is like how much hands-on activity can we do as well. So the Paige, the artist, did black and white illustration. So like printing out the black and white coloring sheet and having the kids color it in while I'm reading the story, or I have recorded audio that can go along with the kids that are coloring. And then we do like, getting the kids out in the garden with hands-on projects and stuff like that, like just involving them. And it's so amazing how quick they pick up on stuff. Like my own kids, like immediately will just be like, let's go pick some herbs for tea, and we'll just do it once, and then they'll remember like where all the little wild herbs are growing, and they'll
Mhm.
run out in the garden and make their own tea, just after seeing me do it once. So yeah,
Do
just getting
you
involved.
Your book actually comes with a recording? Is
Mhm.
Okay, so in the book there's like an activity or a drawing activity, and then they could go do like a downloadable MP3 or something?
Yeah, there's downloadable audio as well. So
Oh,
the-
sweet. Okay.
yeah,
That
yeah.
adds a lot. Uh
Mhm.
while we're on the topic, are you planning on doing like a second follow-up book to this?
I would love to. So my greater vision was kind of to be able to do a book like that for each like unique region in this United States, because I feel like getting to know like your local plants, right? Like your native ones to those areas is so important for cultivating respect and awareness of that unique environment. Um, so I wanted to do something for like the West Coast or the South or the East, and even like different, areas around the states. I thought would be really fun. I've already like can see characters like the white sage, like elderly man, or even like the elder plant. So yeah, we'll see if I get to travel around and get to know the plants in other places,
Right.
but it might just be a version 2 of Hawaiian plants as well.
Right. There's plenty of plants in Hawaii to do it on, I'm
I
sure.
know, it was really funny. Like, I don't really even know how I decided on which plants, got to make it into the book. It was just
Right.
kind of like, I guess it was plants that I learned about like over and over again in my classes and we just used, so I knew the plants very well. But there are like so many native ones that would be fun to add. Like there's one here that's kind of like our Hawaiian mullein, I guess.
Hmm.
It's fuzzy and it is used for lung, for lung medicine as well. So yeah, we'll see.
Very cool. Well, I'm requesting one for the Northwest and the Midwest. So
Okay. Well, help me
uh
put together some plants. I know it'd be fun to. The usnea,
totally.
there's one that would be fun to do. Hmm.
Oh, Usnia?
Hmm.
Yeah, totally. You probably didn't see this, but on my Instagram the other day, Amanda covered my whole beard in Usnia. And it was all found on the ground, so like no trees were harmed in the making of it. But
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of Usnia here in Oregon, so Western
Yeah, we
Oregon.
have it growing here too, which is fun. It was another fun discovery.
That's cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so looks like we got one more question. So this is Amanda's favorite question, and it's what is your favorite part of being an herbalist, and what's your big why that keeps you learning and growing?
Yeah, I think talking about it a little bit like earlier as well, like how just the ongoing discovery and like deepening that relationship with the plants and always kind of being surprised and playing with them is really important to me. Um, One thing that I've been really celebrating and that has kept me going is just like their reliability and their loyalty. I feel like plants are so loyal, like I can go outside in my garden and know like that plant is going to be there for me and I know how it's going to affect me and it does it every single time. Like
Yeah.
they're like that's a really good friend, that you can always rely on. And that's one thing I've really appreciated having that knowledge of plants and what they can do for you and how they interact with us. And that comes with time, that comes with relationships, that comes with like any type of relationship. It's an ongoing communication, it's ongoing attention. And it's one thing that's kept me going is, just they're so loyal and dependable. And I'm so thankful for that.
I can't say I've ever heard it put that way. I really, yeah, it really makes you think. I've never really thought of them as like super reliable, but yeah, of course, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Like you can go out and pick an herb, or if you have one on your shelf, you know what it's going to do. You know
Yeah,
what it can do.
yeah,
And it's just having that consistency and that reliability is in a world that's just so, you know, turned upside down or just whatever it is right now. It's so nice to have something you can rely on and count on.
I love that.
Mhm.
Uh, I got this character right here.
Cute. I was wondering what, yeah, I thought
Yeah,
you had an animal there.
she's seeking attention right now, and she like is shoving her head against the table, and it's like moving the whole thing. So if you see, yeah, there you go. But that's Zilla.
Wow.
Um, well, thank you, Sonia. This is the first time we've actually met and hung out, so this has been a lot of fun.
It has
I
been
definitely
fun.
want to plug the audience. Definitely check out Super Noni and Friends. Did I get your name right? Yamaguchi?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And now it's selling on Amazon. So it's super easy to find, or they can find me on
cool.
Instagram as Yamamama.
At
And
Yamamama. Any
yeah,
website we should link to as well?
no,
Is
it's
it
on Amazon. Yeah.
very good?
Or there's
Cool.
also supernoni.org
Okay.
has the bonuses. I was selling books out of there, but recently I moved all the books sales to Amazon. It's
That
just
makes it a lot
easier.
easier.
Yeah, it does. I know.
Totally.
Yeah, it
Well,
does.
very cool. Thank you for joining the second episode of the Herbalist Hour. This is really exciting for me too. We first one on Zoom, so I think it went really well. Yeah, any last words of advice or say anything to the audience or?
Not just I love you.
We love you too.
Yeah. And plants, the herbs are the real herbalists, you know. Yeah.
Reach. I love it. Well, very cool. Yeah, like I said, you could expect this on YouTube as well as the podcast. So probably even tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. But
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mason.
cool.
It's been so great to get to know you. And I hope we get to meet in real life someday. Will you let me know if there's fun things happening on the West Coast that I can come and check out? I'd love that.
Always, yeah. And unfortunately, we can't drive the RV across, the Pacific to get to Hawaii. But we definitely want to do like a herbalist trip out in Hawaii, and we'll definitely hit you up when we're out there. So
Yeah, come to the Garden Island.
I love that. All right.
All right. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
We could stay on too.
Okay. Aloha.
Yeah.